Hello, PascoMath teachers and leaders. The purpose of this video is to actually break down the instructional practice guide from Achieve the Core, specifically looking at Core Action 1 and giving some general information about what that means. And so when we look at Core Action 1, we want to ensure that the work of the lesson reflects the shifts required by the Common Core State Standards for mathematics. And so we can use the Common Core State Standards and the Math Florida Standards interchangeably here as we talk general. There are some distinctions between them, but that's not the purpose here. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first off is instructional practice guide from Achieve the Core is broken down into 3 core actions. And so core action 1, what we're going to talk about today, is the math shifts. Core action 2 gets into the teacher moves, things the teacher intentionally does to design the lesson. And then core action 3 is more about the students and the standards for mathematical practice. The link there, if you just Google Achieve the Core and Instructional Practice Guide, it'll be one of the top hits, or you can just use. So when we speak of the math shifts, there are 3 of them: focus, coherence, and rigor. Hopefully this is a new learning, and so it's something that we have emphasized for a couple years since the standards have rolled out. So let's dive into what each of those means. So when we're talking about focus, really we need to focus strongly where the standards focus. So what we mean by that is we're not necessarily with the next gen standards, we actually already narrowed the scope of the content, but now with our new standards, we're really emphasizing the time spent on certain standards. And so we have within our curricular resources, we have identified major, supporting, and additional work. And so when we talk about focus, it's really focusing on that major work of your grade. When you look at the big 6, 6th grade through Algebra 2, once you get up there in Algebra 2, you see there are a lot of standards, and we can't teach all those equally. Each of the standard of those 77 shouldn't get the same amount of time. And so it's really focusing on the major work of each grade. When we talk about coherence, one of my favorite stories in the publisher criteria is the authors of the standards talk about the vase. And so they present a scenario in which they said that you order a vase, for whatever reason you're a vase collector, and so when you receive the vase, it's in a million pieces, like you see on the right side there. It's broken and just shattered. And then they ask, as a customer, are you happy? And the answer is no, but the owner of the store says, well, you have the complete vase. It's all there, every single piece. But as a customer, we know we're not happy because it's not the same. And so kind of question, sometimes where at the end of the year as a math teacher, if we have our standards checklist, we can just check them all off and say, I've taught it all, and feel comfortable that we covered all the standards, but we know coverage doesn't equal learning. And so we need to stop presenting our students with these fragmented bits and pieces of math knowledge and make sure that we're tying it to the big picture. And that's what coherence is really all about. And so there's a quote straight from the standards that says, fragmenting the standards into individual standards or individual bits of standards erases all the relationships and produces a sum of parts that's decidedly less than the whole. And that's just really stuck with me, so I wanted to share it with you. So when we're looking at what is coherence, it's really about making math make sense. And we're not only carefully connecting the learning across grades, but also within our grade and how our content builds on itself. And the other piece is really starting to count on that solid conceptual understanding of core content and build on it. Not treat each standard like a new event. And so kids do have prior knowledge, and we need to actually extend. A lot of times in our standards it even says apply and extend previous, and then that's how the standard starts. So that should be a red flag for us. Alarms should be going off that there is prior knowledge that we need to activate. And so we have some tools like the coherence map, and in our curricular resources that's presented in there for us to make sense and really be able to leverage that prior learning. The third shift is rigor. And so again, we're lucky in mathematics because we have a specific definition for rigor. So that word has been thrown out there a lot. And when we're talking about mathematics, there's the actual definition that we believe in. And so as to help students meet the expectation of the standards, they'll need to pursue with equal intensity 3 aspects of rigor. That's conceptual understanding, procedural skill and fluency, and applications. And so we just need to make sure that rigor isn't a code word for just one of these, but it means equal intensity in all 3. And so in our standards, we're lucky enough, the way they're written, that the language of the standard helps us determine what aspect of rigor should be emphasized for that standard. I want to throw out emphasize because sometimes you'll have multiple aspects of rigor going on depending on where you are in the learning trajectory for that standard. So the word understand is used in the standards. That really is explicit. It shows that we should be focused on conceptual understanding. We'll see the word fluently or use. Those things maybe might be expectations for that procedural skill or fluency. And then that real world problems. We have the modeling star in our standards. That should be a red flag for opportunities for that application piece for sure. So what this looks like on the instructional practice guide. So if you download the Achieve the Core instructional practice guide, this is core action 1 broken down here. And again, you look at core action 1, indicator A. It's the lesson focused on the depth of course level clusters, course level content standards, or parts thereof. And so when you're planning for instruction, this is something that you could definitely use, or PLCs could use to determine, like, is the lesson really focused on the mathematics within the course level, or are we doing some things, maybe sometimes in our resources that are outside that grade level? We just need to be mindful of that. The lesson intentionally relates new concepts to students' prior knowledge. And so again, that's a question you always should answer when designing a lesson. It's how am I going to leverage what they already know and make that connect, as well as plant some seeds for where it's going. And so coherence not only is looking backwards, but also looking forward. And the last piece is that the lesson intentionally targets aspects of rigor called on by the standards. So again, there's conceptual understanding, procedural skill, and fluency in application. More than one can be going on at once, and so we just want to make sure that whatever the standard's calling for, we want to make sure we're definitely adhering to that, and not just focusing on maybe the skill when the expectation is for students to apply. Or maybe if we start procedurally when the standard calls for conceptual, definitely concepts before procedures is what we believe in as a PascoMath family, and so we definitely would want to emphasize that. So that's it for our learning around Core Action 1. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me or your regional specialist, and thank you for making PascoMath more awesome.